Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Hold on to the edge of your seats because you are in for quite the ride. It's time for the Granada Forum Radio Show. Right now, live on air with your host, Granada Wendy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Granada Forum radio program. Today is April 20th, and we've got all kinds of things going on tonight. I'd like to thank my wonderful co-host, Mr. Nick Pearson.
Hey.
And my wonderful producer, who we cannot live without, Mr. Richard Kane.
Hello, I'm working with my webcam microphone, so I'll be muted most of the time working on my sound.
Okay. I didn't know there was a problem. Okay. We don't have a guest tonight. We're going to do a round table, but we figured no problem. We have lots to talk about. But I want to say one thing. On May 18th, we do have Deborah Tavares. We have rescheduled her for May 18th. And I also scheduled...
Sorry, the person you are trying to reach has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Please try your call again later. Goodbye.
The beauty of Skype. What can I tell you? We can't do anything off air.
There you go. And
I'm on.
Okay, cool. Don't. By the way, when is Alien Con is June 15th? Is that correct? Bob?
Yeah. Let me go get my calendar, and
I think it's June 15th. We decided to go to Alien Con and do a live show there, and we're looking forward to doing that. And that's going to be June 15th at the, I believe, it's Pasadena.
Yeah.
And June 15th, and we will be there live at June 15th at the Alien Con, and it'll be a lot of fun. We'll interview a lot of some ufologists and have a good time there. We're looking forward to that. Also, too. May 25th, I did schedule, besides Deborah Tavares, for April 18th. May 25th, we are having G. Edward Griffin, the man who wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, on our show. So we're looking forward to that on the 25th of May, and, of course, on the 18th, Deborah Tavares. And we have a few other surprises besides the Alien Con, which we're very looking much forward to for the 15th of June. We've got a couple other things going on, too. So we're bringing on a lot of good guests, and be busy on the hizzy for that, but we're looking good for that. Oh, by the way, real quick, too, tomorrow, April 21st, 2018, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Calvary Chapel Church in Tustin, and that's 1500 East 17th Street, Santa Ana, California. The Eagle Forum is going to be there, and it's going to be very, very good. If you can go to www.eagleforumofcalifornia.org, that's www.eagleforumofcalifornia.org. And again, that's going to be tomorrow, the 21st, 2018, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Calvary Chapel Church in Tustin at 1500 East 17th Street, Santa Ana, California, 92705. And we'll give you a phone number, too, 714-963-4753. That's 714-963-4753. And again, www.eagleforumofcalifornia.org, eagleforumofcalifornia.org, and that's SOS, Save Our State, and they've got 6, 7, 8 different speakers, and Orlean Coates, which we had 2 weeks ago, and G. Edward Griffin is going to be there as well, and of course David Lehman, a PhD, is going to be there, and Ruth Weiss, and Craig Hewitt is going to be there. And Tabitha Walter, Mary Baker, and Brad Dukakis. So it'll be good. A lot of fun there tomorrow. I so hope you guys can make it to the Eagle Forum of California in Orange County. It'll be fun. And again, on May 18th, Deborah Tavares. By the way, we do have this up on YouTube. Last week with Deborah Tavares. Last week, she's up on our YouTube account, GranadaForum.com, or Granada Forum, YouTube. Also, too, Alien Con is the June 15th, and we'll be there, too. And then, of course, on the 25th, we're going to bring on J. Edward Griffin, so it'll be a lot of fun there, too. By the way, this is Revolution Radio. We're the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported internet talk radio station in the world. We are located at freedomslips.com. That's freedomslips, SLIPS.com. And you can get us hold of us there, too. Okay, and let's see what else I got going. Also, too, at the Natural Health Solutions Expo, at the LAX Marriott at 5855 West Century Boulevard, LA 90045. Let me give you a phone number, 562-212-3479, 562-212-3479. That'll be September 22nd and 23rd. We will be there live and well as filming there, so it'll be a lot of fun there at the Natural Health Solutions Expo, and we're looking forward to that one very much so. And we also, too, want to thank the people from Ola Lola. That's drinkyourvitamins.com, drinkyourvitamins.com. We can't say enough about their product. It's absolutely wonderful. If you don't believe me, just try some. And that's drinkyourvitamins.com, Ola Lola. We can't say enough about them. Great people. Greg Kuhn and his wife, wonderful people. I want to say thank you so much for everything they've done for us at the Granada Forum. And we're very grateful for that. Let's see. So real quick, so I think I said a few announcements. And Nick, what is on the schedule? I mean, that you'd like to talk and.
Oh, we can run into about just about anything. I mean, between us being able to do our roundtable, so much happens.
Yeah, I know.
We can talk about how that David Hogg and his little group of Nazis are running around, and their whole anti-gun movement is kind of fizzling out. So he's going to find himself pretty much rejected when he was the darling of the anti-gun movement there for a while.
Well, yeah.
We could talk about McCabe and Comey. We can talk about, you put the topic on the table and we can run with it.
How's my sound, guys?
How about the 30 inches of global warming that wound up on front of your garage?
Oh, yeah, we could talk about that, too. Global warming, I had to dig my way through 6-foot snowdrift to clear my sidewalk. Yeah, thanks a lot there, global warming. Thanks, Al Gore. You were right on target with that one.
How about the video on the dark web that's circulating about
Hillary Clinton one?
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's very scary stuff I hear.
Hold on.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about everything. Also, there's something very interesting that Quinn Michaels was talking about today.
Okay.
He revealed, well, we all know the genius of Nikola Tesla. Okay. Yeah. And we all heard the tale when he died that the government came in and confiscated all his important papers that he was working on. Do you know who was the head of who confiscated it on behalf of the government? Do you know who it was?
Rockefeller?
No. Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump. And do you know he bestowed to his beloved nephew, our current president, the information? Now, what's really interesting is Quinn Michaels just revealed it today, and I even think, I don't know who it was, a publication verified it and came out with it later on in the afternoon. And it's very, very, he was working on portals, he was working on portals and time. And there's a theory going on that, Trump is smarter than we think. And
I don't think he's worried that because I think he is.
He's been given privileged information. Could you believe your uncle is giving you all that Tesla information? This is like really mind blowing. Because Tesla was truly a genius. He was able to hypothesize about time travel and portal mechanics. And when the government went in, we all heard, they went into his laboratory and took most of his work. Quinn revealed today that the person, you could look this up, just look up John G. Trump. And he bestowed those documents to his beloved nephew. Now, of course, the jealousy and hate that his enemies display, they're way out of line. I mean, nobody's perfect and nobody can satisfy all the people all the time. But Trump is fighting the satanic pedophilia and the cannibalism movement that is really gaining popular amongst the elite. I guess they have nothing else to do. So disgusting as it is. No, disgusting. Now, listen,
Sorry.
The other night, I hate to say, I was with Wendy the other night, and I showed her a photo. She wasn't laughing after I showed her the photo. I think we were both ready to almost vomit when you saw that human being that was that man that was tied up like a turkey that was roasted.
Yeah, you might want to give out the website so people can see it for themselves and make their own decision.
Well, yeah, it's a video.
Hello?
I think it was. Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, we got John. Keep going, Bob.
Okay, so discussing it as is, there's something that's called adrenochrome, and it's very, very, it's a desirable drug. It's what the sickos wanted. That's why they drink the blood, because it contains the most powerful. It's a substance that that's released in the body when trauma is put upon the victim. So the reason why pedophilia is so rampant among Satanists is that, they get their jollies off doing their sexual acts, and then they commit torture. They torture their victims, and while their victims are tortured, the adrenochrome is secreted. And what they do is then there's a certain carefully executed ritual where they carve the victim so that the blood, they gather the blood in containers, and they can either drink it straight off, or there are laboratories that have the where they I guess put it into drug form. Okay, now this is what the Clintons started doing this in I guess when we were in, was it Bosnia? Where was it where they fought in the 90s?
Yeah, they were in Europe.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just terrible what's going on. But apparently, they got this video from the New York Police Department when they were looking at our great Anthony Weiner laptop, and they found these the files. It was actually entitled life insurance policy, because what it had Hillary and his beloved wife Huma, having sexual with I think it was a 13-year-old girl, and then they did some terrible things, like they cut out the eyes and
Have you actually found that video?
No, I'm getting 13 books from, I forgot the name of David. What's his name? Zublik. He's got David Zublik. Let me just see if I can get it. Reveal the Truth or something like that.
Right.
He's very good. Anyways, I think that's his. Let me see if that's him. David Zublik channel. I can't believe it. It's the David Zublick channel. Just go to YouTube and put his name in. And I purchased it. There's like all these different booklets on it, and what could I say except that I did hear like 10 seconds someone posted it, because you can't have it. You can't have it on the regular net. That's that's possessing a snuff film. That's like,
that'll get you time in prison, especially with an underage girl.
Right. So basically, there's a way to access it where you could view it, but somebody downloaded like 10 seconds where you couldn't really see what was going on, but you could hear the victim scream, and it's something you don't want to hear. It's something that just isn't pleasant.
Well, it's got to be buried. It's got to be buried pretty deep on the dark web, because I actually went around and did a search for it just to see if I could find it. Because if I did find it, I would make sure that people saw that thing.
Oh,
but
yeah, I'm going to take my laptop around and go to...
You probably have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody else to even see the thing.
Zublik, in one of his videos, I don't know which one it was, I have to go back, and he talked about how he's got someone who, in the dark web, he printed out how you can go and find it. And as soon as I get it, I'll give you a call, Nick. And I did run into somebody. I did run into somebody who knows about the dark web. So when I get it, he'll be able to maneuver around. But it's just sick. But it's very interesting today, the news from Quinn Michaels about, see, he calls it, he's got this new campaign going on where he calls it time phone hack, where you can time phone hack the future. And I don't know if it's a phone that actually gets you into the future, but when you think about it, like for me, who I'm an avid Rolling Stones fan, and I used to just do when I was a teenager, I would just listen to my vinyl. But now, because of the YouTube and the modern technology, I can go back and see any year live performances and studio outtakes and songs that were never released. And it's unbelievable, what you can do with modern technology. It's just amazing.
Yes.
But I listen, my three guys are Quinn Michaels, Jason Goodman with Crowdsource the Truth, too, and of course our good friend George Webb.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm gonna sign off and put myself on mute and listen to the rest of the show. And thank you.
Okay, I've got something to add to what you've said, because basically it has something to do with what actually was going on today with all of the students going out of their classes and asking for more gun control. Now, if right now you're going to say, well, that's not related to Bosnia or Herzegovina or these allegations about Hillary and the late wife of Anthony Weiner. But I did some research on Columbine's school shooting massacre, which I have never heard released to the public. And let me just say this. For those of you that may not recall, that incident occurred 17 years ago on April 20th, 1999, when 13 persons were murdered and 21 more were injured by Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, who were both gifted and senior students on campus. Now, that word gifted is something that may not be understood by the general public, but for Klebold and Harris to be identified as being gifted, their intelligence quotients, or IQ, had to be at least 130, which would place them in the very top 2% of the human population. Now, as an educator, I taught mentally gifted minors, or so-called MGM students, at both the elementary and secondary academic levels, as well as at the college level. And so I've come to the conclusion that Both Klebold as well as Harris were very clever manipulators who plotted their actions at every step with a series of ploys such as writing fabricated journals, visiting a psychologist, requesting medication for depression from a psychiatrist or physician, and allegedly becoming victims of bullying, that every person with their intellect would have had the ability to overcome if indeed it were the cause. Now, in addition, heavy metal or dark music could have been a contributing factor to their rather diabolical behavior, as well as rationalizing their actions based upon being victims of bullying. Now, to give you a better understanding of where I'm coming from, back in 1959, I saw this motion picture called Compulsion, starring Orson Welles, who played the role of Clarence Darrow, who was the defense attorney for these sociopathic graduate students at the University of Chicago. Nathan Freudenthal, Leopold Jr., and Richard Arbert Loeb, who on May of 1924 had kidnapped and murdered 14-year-old Robert Franks in Chicago. Now, this film was released in 1959, but it's interesting to note that Clarence Darrow was able to prevent them from getting capital punishment. Instead, they got a life imprisonment with 99 years plus. But Leob was murdered by a fellow prisoner in 1936, and Leopold was released on parole in 1958, a year before the film Compulsion was released. Now, keep in mind their exceptional intellects. For Klebold and Harris to have an IQ of at least 130 strongly suggests something. Now, let me go back to Leopold once more, who had already completed an undergraduate degree at the University of Chicago with 5 Beta Kappa honors, was estimated to have an IQ of 210. Loeb, who became the University of Michigan's youngest graduate at the age of 17, was also exceptionally intelligent and obsessed with crime. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, the Leopold Loeb kidnapping and murder of the 14-year-old boy was very diabolical, just as you described. And keep in mind that these are criminal acts. And ironically, these students today, without knowing anything about these two young criminals, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, who were gifted students with an IQ of at least 130 each, they illegally purchased weapons from persons who were later arrested, convicted, and sentenced for their crimes. And in addition, we also failed to remember that the police and sheriff deputies failed to take any brave or heroic action for immediate rapid deployment onto the school campus. So again, the students are now demonstrating for more gun control for law-abiding U.S. citizens so that they will lose their gun rights. This is how moronic our nation is. And now you bring out the fact that we have some very diabolical people who have been in very high places, and it is tolerated apparently by society. And I know that these two women have very high intelligent quotients or IQ, and for some reason it seems like the very intelligent, diabolical people are able to literally get away with murder. And I just wanted to share that.
Which two women are you talking about?
I thought you said Hillary, or did I misunderstand you earlier? I thought they were involved with a young girl.
Hillary Clinton and
yeah.
Uma Abedin.
There's that video that's up running around on the dark web of Hillary and Uma Abedin having sex with a 13-year-old.
Oh, so say the names again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part clearly.
Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin. They've been in the news forever.
Oh, that's terrible.
I thought you were talking about somebody, two different people, because you had said these two women, and it's like, okay, we had already mentioned them, but okay. But yeah, but there's also the other thing that a lot of people forget about these kids from Florida is the fact they don't eat. I don't even think they realize it. I think they're making a career choice, but what they're doing, they don't seem to realize that they're simply pawns for the globalists and the Democrats, which are basically the Communist Party in the United States anymore. They're just being used, and they think they're doing something. And you take that little mean look that David Hogg always seems to have on his face, like, I'm very serious about what I'm doing. You know, the little soy boy guy, Joseph Goebbels wannabe, and I can't take the guy seriously. I mean, he gets up, he gets put up on stage. He gets all the little benefits that go along with George Soros's money that's funding a lot of these groups that are funding. George Soros funds these groups. These groups fund all these movements. And David Hogg is one of the recipients of some of that money. And he gets out there and acts like, I'm doing something good. No, he's a little more ambitious than that. He's not trying to do anything except further his own career and agenda, and gun control just happened to be one of them. I mean, he's already been a proven liar. He can't remember whether he was at the school or not.
Well, he rode on his bicycle over to the school.
Well, that's what he said the second time. The first time he said he was there.
Oh, that's good.
Well, he said he was. I was at the school when the shooting started at one time, and then when he was interviewed in a different. From somebody else at a different time, he said, well, I had to ride 3 miles to get to the school. So you can't believe this guy. Now he's getting mad because he's being turned down for every college that he applies to. And maybe it's just the fact that, well, instead of fabricating a bunch of stories about where you were and who you are, maybe you should have concentrated on your grades instead, And I don't know what his GPA is, but I'm having a feeling it's probably not very good.
Yeah, well, he's very theatrical and probably an A student in drama.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Ironically, there is also a student about his same age at that particular school who was able to debate very successfully some talk show hosts over in Great Britain just a few weeks ago, but you don't hear anything about him. He was able to. I forget his name.
No, I know who you're talking about. He's the one very pro-gun student from the same school. Mainstream media will not put him out there, not run his face 24/7, because he doesn't fit the narrative that they're trying to push. And if anybody, I mean, especially right now with everything that you've been seeing with CNN and all the other CNN just happens to be at the top of my list of fake news. Because they literally been caught so many times just making things up. But, they all do it. ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the rest of them. They're all making something up to push an agenda. And they won't put this guy on because he's not pushing the narrative that they want. I'm surprised, Sean Hannity and Mark Levin, who both claim to be these great constitutionalists, are even at Fox anymore, but that's their outlet, that's their bread and butter, so I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But it's like when you see these two guys on there claiming how great they know the Constitution and love the Constitution. Mark Levin, I have extreme doubts about anyway. He has his own agenda. When he stood against Ron Paul, I was done with him. Same thing with Sean Hannity. When he stood against Ron Paul, I was done with him. And I don't disagree with these guys all the time, but I don't agree with them all the time either. It's probably about 60-40 on either. I mean, because Mark Levin can can really say some really good things, but then he blows it. He's like Glenn Beck, to me.
Yeah, they're both neocons.
Well, yeah, of course, absolutely. He's a neocon warhawk. So was Sean Hannity. He supports the neocon warhawks, and I never ever hear them saying, "Why are we bombing Syria?" They never question it. They're basically out there this is one of the big things I have a real issue with Donald Trump with is his foreign policy, which really sucks. It's like, why are we in Syria in the first place? Okay. But you never hear these guys mainstream media questioning. The left will, just simply because, if Obama had done it, they would have questioned it. But Trump's doing it, they question it. So you can't believe the truthfulness of anything that the left-wing mainstream media says. But, Sean and Mark Levin are supposed to be these great stalwarts of right-wing conservatism. And you never hear them questioning, why are we in Syria when it has nothing to do with our interests? And by the way, it's been proven that gas attack probably never even really happened.
I know there is some stuff on there. That they were just kids got dumped with water. It was really a total lie.
Yeah, they had a reporter go over there and shove her head into a bag and said, "Well, it smells like sarin gas to me." It's like, well, how are you even alive then?
Right.
Yeah. This is what I wanted to report on last week.
That little Syrian kid that's out there, you can find it on the internet, who's saying, that none of this ever happened. And, they showed him being taken into a hospital and the doctors doing something to him, but he was never, he was fine when he walked in. He was like, yeah, whatever. And all of a sudden they started hosing him down with water hoses and all this. And, the kid totally lost his mind. And those are the pictures they took as proof that a gas attack had happened. And you have multiple reporters coming in from different countries going into Syria, into Damascus, and they're going like, there has been no chemical attack here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me just share something very quickly. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but especially during World War II, my father, who had been in the U.S. Army Reserves, was called to active duty. He was a chemical warfare officer, and he was in charge of training all personnel in the Western United States. Later on, he was secretly sent to the Soviet Union to train their military personnel in chemical warfare defense. And when he returned, he was at the Pentagon in Washington for a while. This is all during World War II. And later on, I read through practically every manual related to chemical warfare in this large crate that he had placed in the basement of our home. And so I got a pretty good idea. And by the way, this does relate to chemtrails, which goes back to the 1920s, the idea and the technology. And so I had a pretty good background, plus what I received through my basic training in the U.S. Coast Guard, which was quite just comparable to what the length of your basic training in the Marine Corps, Nick. And
well, I did a little more than as far as NBC warfare goes. I'm a little more advanced than basic training. So. Yeah,
well, we also had advanced training as well after our basic, as we were involved in a 6-month active duty training program at the time. And so I have a fairly good understanding. And when I watched that footage, Nick and Wendy, very carefully, I noticed that none of the rescue personnel were wearing any type of protective equipment except one person who had a gas mask and a protective suit, but he wasn't wearing gloves.
Right.
And of course, no one was wearing gloves. No one was wearing a gas mask. And if that had been a lethal chemical reagent or chemical weapon, it would have caused great harm to those people. So all we saw them was the children in line, in a very orderly line, very carefully, as if they were waiting to see Santa Claus. they were able to stand up. If they had been exposed to lethal chemical weapons, they would not have been able to stand and wait patiently as long as they did. And then they were each doused with water. And one little girl, they forced an inhaler into her mouth, which probably could have caused her harm, but they just wanted to make it dramatic, even if it would kill the kid.
Here's the thing. Here's one of the things that I did notice, because I did take NBC warfare training, and you get to learn what some of the antidotes are. Now, washing people off with water is fine for some things, but for the most part, for the kind of chemicals that they're talking about, washing off with water isn't going to do it. Okay, you're talking about sarin gas. You're going to need something to clean your lungs out, and an inhaler's not going to do it. In some cases, you need to be injected with antidotes. Atropine is usually one of the big ones, especially if it's a nerve agent. I didn't see anybody getting injections of anything, and I'm not talking about somebody coming out with a syringe, pulling out a vial of antidote. I'm talking about one of those ones you simply stab into your leg and immediately shoot you with something on a a spring trigger with a needle. Yeah, that's the one. What they issue to soldiers going out in the field if they think there's going to be a chemical warfare. You just grab these things and you jam them in your leg real quick and tag it.
Right to your clothing.
There was nothing of that. These kids were not coming in there blistered up. They weren't coming in coughing up their lungs. They weren't coming in there turning purple, which is a sign of a hemotoxin, which could have also been used. They weren't coming in with any signs of chemical attacks at all, but they were, especially that one with that little Syrian kid and his father, and come walking in the hospital and they immediately start dousing the kid. Now, the only thing that's going to kill that kid is he's probably going to drown from the amount of water they were pouring on him.
Yeah.
Just to get the photo op in there. So.
Yeah. But one point that you just brought out, I just want to make sure the audience understood. If you examine their faces and the skin on their arms, any parts of their body that were exposed, you didn't see any inflammation, any redness of the skin, any blisters, as you mentioned, at all.
No, there were no signs of any kind of a chemical attack whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they had reporters going through Damascus the next day, talking with people, and it's like, "Oh, what do you think about the chemical attack? What chemical attack? What are you talking about?" If it did happen, or if it was reported that it happened, it didn't happen the way they said it. This is very characteristic of another false flag. I think a lot of false information got pushed into Trump's office, and he immediately said, "Okay, let's bomb them." It's like, okay, well, here we are back right where we were with the Bushes, with the Clintons, with Obamas, and now we're dealing with Trump. And this is going back throughout the 20th century, where we get sucked into all these conflicts that we don't need to be part of. What part of, hey, instead of reacting, let's sit back and figure out what the situation is. Number one, Syria, we have nothing to really do with Syria. They're not attacking our interests, as far as that goes. Okay, they haven't attacked our troops. They haven't attacked our supply lines. We haven't, I'm not going to sit here and champion Assad. I don't know that much about him because I really don't care about him. He has nothing to be, he's not really doing anything aggressive against the United States and our interests. He might be doing something that the globalists don't want, because Syria is probably sitting on a huge deposit of resources. Plus, they don't have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. That one's probably the biggest one of all of them, is they don't have a central bank controlled by the banking cartels, and they want to control their money supply, put the country in debt, and then when they can't afford to pay it back, let's just take their country away from them. That seems to be the most operandi. So
let's not forget that Israel, their neighbor, who got the Golan Heights from the Six-Day War in '67, they know there's like 30 miles just right near them on the border is the richest gas and oil reserves
Right. Well,
Syria
there you
and
go.
Genie, and our friend Dick Cheney of Genie Oil, they
Right.
want it.
Yeah, they want
And
all
they're
of
gonna
that.
get
That's
it.
why we went into Afghanistan. Okay, let's see. We get. Let's just pretend for 1 second that that 9/11 actually happened the way they said it happened. Okay, 19 of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. So let's go invade. Oh, I don't know. Let's go invade Iraq. They had nothing to do with it. Let's go invade
Or
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
They had nothing to
Yeah.
do with it. Well, it turns out Iraq is sitting on gigantic deposits of oil. Afghanistan is sitting on one of the largest deposits of lithium in the world, and which is also needed for
And opium, Afghanistan opium.
Well, yeah, well they're
that's true.
sitting on a giant lithium deposit worth over $4 trillion from what I remember reading. And you need that element to be able to create the lithium ion batteries that are going into electric cars. You know, among aside from your like AA and AAA batteries that everybody uses. So, I mean, it's all about the resources. I mean, if anybody really wants to get a handle on why we keep fighting all these countries that had nothing to do with anything, there's two books I recommend reading. Some of it's on video if you want to catch it on video on YouTube also. One of them is War is a Racket by General Smedley D. Butler. And he even explains that, for years he had to convince himself in the Marine Corps that he was doing the right thing. It probably didn't take very much convincing because he was probably very much into what he was doing. 2-time Medal of Honor winner. The guy had to believe he was doing the right thing for so many years. And when he got out, he found, he had to take stock of what he had done. And when he wrote War is a Racket, he goes, I was fighting for fruit companies. I was fighting for steel companies. I was fighting for global corporations. I wasn't fighting for freedom of America, which is what I should have been doing. The other read, or if you want to see the video, is called Diary of an Economic Hitman. And this guy went through step by step how these wars end up starting. It starts with,
That was
hey, this
John
country
Perkins,
has resources. Right? We're going to offer you a loan. I want to do that. I'm still turning on the loan. Guess what? You're not that guy in this whole situation. We're going to send in a team to kill you. That doesn't work. Then we send in the military and we start bombing the hell out of them. I have a feeling it's more than one global loan to keep the resources of Syria for the benefit of Syria. It's kind of like Gaddafi was using the resources in Libya for the benefit of Libya, not just Libya, Africa as a continent. He actually put up a currency that was challenging the Rothschild-controlled currency system. So, of course, he became the most evil guy on the planet when he was pretty much put in his place by Ronald Reagan back in the 80s when we blew the hell out of him. And, hadn't heard from the guy for forever, but he started making Libya a halfway decent place. Well, we can't have that. We got to blow the place up. So when it comes to Syria, I'm really, really skeptical about any of this. I'm really disappointed that Donald Trump actually went in there and started shooting missiles at the place when there was absolutely zero proof that any chemical attack actually happened. At some point, the United States has to mind its own goddamn business.
Yeah. One other thing that we should be aware of, this was the same time when John Bolton became the acting national security advisor for President Trump.
Too. Well, yeah, we all knew Bolton was a war hawk as soon as, even from way back when he was doing his thing before.
Back in 1999, he was signatory to a document which basically was going to have the United States invade most of the nations in the Middle East.
Right, and
on behalf of the.
Then he gets put up as a security advisor, and we expect him to advise Donald Trump of anything else.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Bill Kristol was dancing as soon as he heard, we're going to go bomb Syria, and Bill Kristol's probably like, yes, we're back on track to what we were doing.
In fact, Bill Kristol was co-founder of the organization which put out that
for
document.
New American Century.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I heard that something very frightening on Alex Jones' program earlier this week, in which one of his guests alleged that our current secretary to the United Nations, is that Nikki Haley? I'm guessing on her name, and also Mike Pence may attempt to take over the presidency.
Who's coughing?
Yeah.
I think that's Bob.
That's actually me.
Oh God, that's you. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Look, if you're gonna keep doing it, we might have to drop the call because that gets really annoying. Sorry, but
Yeah, there's some things, guys, going on. And everything I can say with Columbine, there was a phone call put in by the cell phone that one of the kids called out to somebody, and they said they couldn't retrieve the call. Well, that's a lie. I always thought the kids were Manchurians in some way. They were mind controlled or something, because you don't just wake up in the morning and say, let me just go do this. No. It's not to sit there and say you might not go beat up another kid or dude, but not to the whole school.
Okay, Wendy, are you speaking about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School at Parkland in Florida?
No, I'm talking about Columbine.
Okay.
I'm talking about Columbine. Then Columbine, those two kids one of the kids pulled out a cell phone, called somebody, and supposedly they couldn't ever retrieve it, and I don't believe it. The thing in Florida, which is very interesting, is that, look, the kid was being interviewed by one of the kids and going, we thought it was you when we heard the shooting, and there was still shooting going on the campus. And that the teacher, that wonderful teacher who saved her students, she went on Good Morning America, which you can look up on Good Morning America, and she even said they were grown men with armor suits shooting people. It wasn't a kid. It wasn't a kid.
Oh, by the way, it was Kyle K-A-H-U-V, who was that smart student from the same high school that was also on Face the Nation probably around March 25th.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I think the Parkland thing is just that the woman was on Good Morning America, and they asked her straight out. She said, I never saw the kid shoot. I only saw these two grown men shooting, and they were fully armed. And they were fully, had flak jackets on and everything else. So this is what I don't understand. The mainstream media is covering up. It's causing nothing but problems. There's some major issues going on.
And same thing with Las Vegas. They were in the Parkland shooting. They were talking about being more than one shooter.
Right.
In Vegas, they said there was more than one shooter. All those stories got buried.
Yeah, got buried.
So, and everybody's gonna, anybody who wants to sit there and throw around the term, oh, you're conspiracy theorists, you just don't believe it happened. No, these things happen.
Do a little kind of research.
Yeah, these things happen. They did not happen the way or for the reasons that you think it happened.
Right.
And that's the hallmark of a good false flag. So, and what did that give rise to? It gave rise to this movement of, hey, let's start banning your constitutionally enumerated rights.
Right, and I think it needs to be said, Nick, and this is to be quite frank, look, if you can't live under the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, or the Bill of Rights, then this is not the country that you should be living in. Just leave.
I agree with you.
Just leave. And we don't care where you go. Just go.
No, I actually do care where they go. See, because I want them to learn what it is they're talking about. So if they're all socialist and they really want to be socialist and they want nobody to have any guns and they want to make sure that every time that they scream and holler that they want more government intervention, I got two places for them to go. Go to Cuba or go to Venezuela and live like that for a little while.
Right.
People
that's true.
in Cuba are swimming 90 miles to get to the Florida coast because they can't stand it, and people in Venezuela are heading to the borders over into Colombia because they can't, because Venezuela is such a complete mess. I mean, they're going into the zoos and they're eating the animals in the zoos because they're starving to death.
Right, and I hear that some of the bordering countries of Venezuela that they're getting nothing but people, that people had to leave.
They're good.
And that doesn't really get mentioned, but that's just totally true.
Yeah,
that they've got lots of people.
The government there doesn't seem to be wanting to do anything about it. And then you have a whole bunch of people here in the United States, Democrats, of course, the neocons, who won't do anything to stop them because they're spineless. They're screaming and hollering that, we don't need the Constitution anymore. It's outdated.
It's absolutely treasonous. And I think, I think this is where you stand up and say, look, hey, if you don't want to live under the Constitution, just go somewhere else.
Yeah, there's other places.
That's it. This is our laws. This is the law of the land. This is who we are.
Yeah, this is we have our country. It was founded the way it was founded. It worked for a long time, but there's a bunch of people who suddenly decided that it's an outmoded form of government. No, it's the foundation of the country that actually gives you the right to say what you're saying, to get out on the street and march. Because I guarantee you go to some of these other countries, some of these more totalitarian countries, and you go out on the street and you start marching, they're not going to put up with it. They're going to kill you.
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, how many times do you see Falun Gong marching in protest in China? They pretty much don't.
Often.
Well, they don't, because they will simply shoot them.
Because of what happened in Tiananmen Square. I mean, especially in China. I mean, you can't. Yeah, it's true. You can't really speak out in parts of Venezuela. They're having problems there too. Horror stories.
That guy who stood up against the tanks in Tiananmen Square, the one that the tank driver never ran over, he's been sitting in prison since then. We don't put people in prison for peacefully protesting in the United States, regardless of whether you like what they say or you don't like what they say. But the tenor of what is being said right now, even in the 60s, when those protests were going on for civil rights, with Martin Luther King and others, weren't marching against their rights. They were marching for what they believed was their rights, and they just wanted to get in on the action on that. These guys who are out there marching and protesting now are literally marching against the Constitution of the United States.
I agree, and I think it's very sad because first of all, they're only 17. They're not of age to vote, and
they're not educated.
And they're totally misled by George Soros and these Black Lives and Antifa. It's just a bunch of Nazis. Well, so it's pretty bad.
Well, it's not even just that. It's the education system in general. This whole Common Core thing that got stuck in there, the new textbooks that are coming out, and I've read a couple of them, and they're absolutely horrendous, especially when it comes to history. These kids are not being educated. They're being indoctrinated to think a certain way.
Right.
And when they come out of school, they're like, we have to protest everything, and we shouldn't have to work for anything. We can just get out on the streets. And George Soros is paying for all these protests to happen. So what happens when they succeed? Suddenly these people are going to find themselves out of a job. If they succeed. And they're going to be like, well, where's my paycheck? Well, sorry, we're done using you. You're nobody now, so there is no more paycheck coming. Wait a minute, what? What happened to my $15 an hour guaranteed job? Oh, see that kiosk over there? That took your job. So they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no understanding of real history. They don't understand how these cycles of socialism have come and gone, especially in the 20th century, and how they completely and utterly failed, and all they ended up doing was killing like 150 to 200 million people throughout the 20th century. They're on a roll for the 21st century, but their target now is the United States.
Here's something that
these people are trying to bring the United States to its knees by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And you can't go, and I swear to God, for the love of God, when on the midterm elections, do not vote Republican or Democrat just because they're a Republican or Democrat. Take a look at the candidates.
Okay, guys, we'll be right back, guys.
We wind up with garbage every single time.
Hey, guys, hold on. We'll be right back. We got a whole another hour to talk about all kinds of stuff. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is Granada Forum Revolution Radio. Hold on.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Wendy?
Go ahead, guys.
Did we lose Wendy?
No, she's still on.
Okay. Well, anyway, we left off talking about, for the most part, talking about gun control and these uneducated kids that are coming up and pretending that they know a lot because, their feelings got hurt, and whatever, and they're basically being indoctrinated by these schools, Another brilliant lecture that anybody might want to listen to is a lecture by Dr. Duke Pest out of the University of Wisconsin on Common Core, especially, and while it doesn't revolve around the specifics of Common Core, in a couple points it does. It revolves around who created it and why, and who's getting rich off of it, and and a lot of other things. It's posted up on our Granada Forum YouTube channel if you want to go there and take a look at it. It's astounding that these kids have enough brain power to breathe after they get out of school, and they're so unprepared for what's going to happen to them in the world. What are they going to do if some of these guys, some of the guys who don't go to college, well, a lot of them, as a matter of fact, are the ones who go in there and into our military, and there's some hard scrappers in there. I've worked with a lot of them, but you get some of them who don't, the ones who come out of college, and you kind of figure, or you try to figure out, what are they going to do if they actually have to get into a scrap because something happened in the United States, and the shit hit the fan finally, and they're going to be like, we don't know what to do. What are you going to have, a slap fight, or are you going to try to insult each other and hurt each other's feelings? It's not going to work that way. That's not how the world works. These people are going to get steamrolled and have no idea what happened to them. I mean, all these kids coming out of these liberal cities are just completely unprepared for the intolerance that they're going to wind up with when they start interfering with people in the rural communities, because people in the rural communities are very nice and they're very tolerant, but at some point you're going to push them over a line, and that's just going to be the end of it. I heard Wendy there for a minute.
I thought I heard her for a second too.
Is she? Yeah, it's our great Skype platform, everybody. So I mean, that's why we wind up with background noise and all this other kind of stuff. I can't speak badly enough about Skype at this point. I really at some point hope that Hawk finds a new platform for us to do this show on. But until then, this is what we're stuck with.
Well, by the way, Nick, I'd like to add something to what you were commenting on just before break.
Huh?
About the students walking out.
Oh, that whole thing, yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. One thing people may not be aware of, and that is that the revenue collected by every school district is determined by the state of California, in our case, or in many other states as well, by average daily attendance. Now, when those students walk out of class, the schools do not get credit for that they missed. That's why they used to hire truant officers to get as much revenue as they could. Now, if that is the case, I hope that the taxpayers of those local districts will get wise and say, okay, if you want to, and they're addressing the administrators and the members of the school board and the faculty of the district, okay, if you are going to allow your students to walk out of class, we're not going to pay you for those days. Now, the amount of money that an administrator makes in one day is a sizable amount. They could probably buy a major appliance with that amount of money. So it would penalize them considerably. And it'd be interesting to find out if they're willing to take that cut, even just for that one day.
That might work, except for the people who are running the school system are pretty much on the side of the students walking out. You know, there was one principal.
That's why you have to go to the school boards. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, believe me, I know people who are on school boards, and they're extremely liberal as well. So anything that pushes the liberal agenda, they're all for.
But those are elected positions. There was one
principal who told the students, I can't remember where it was. It was a news blurb that I heard today, and he said any kid walking out of school today will not be able to attend the prom.
There you go.
Well, here's the thing. I never attended my prom anyway, so I really don't understand how important that is to anybody to begin with. You know,
well, maybe they should say something like, if you walk out, then maybe you're going to have to spend a Saturday back in school with your parents, with one of your parents. I'm being honest. On a Saturday,
Well, how about this? How about you walk out of school for this? You just dropped a whole grade in this class.
Yeah.
So if this is some kid who's a high achiever and he's looking to going to some prestigious college somewhere, that dropping of a grade might just be like detrimental to whether or not he gets accepted to that college. It'd be like, okay, well, you walk out, you drop a grade, and you don't get to go to the college of your choice. Community college, here you come. The kid might think twice about it, and teach them for 1 second that there are consequences to your actions, not just blaming in a blanket like everybody, like they like to do with the conservatives or the NRA people or the Gun Owners of America people or whoever, where they're like, well, the actions of one individual is like, we blame all of you. Okay, well, here's the consequence for your actions. You guys walk out. We blame all of you instead. And now you don't get to do what you think you wanted to do. Just these kids are running around saying, you're like, we're the next generation coming up, and you adults have failed us, and we're going to take over and whatever.
I know.
It's kind of like, you guys don't even have the smarts how to do math because you've been learning Common Core for your entire school career. Okay, you're not even old enough to vote. You're not old enough to drink. Not that that's a big thing, but you guys are not even considered adults yet, and yet you think you're going to be threatening me, who's got a hell of a lot more experience on this planet than you do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was kind of a smart ass when I was growing up too. Guess what? Over the year, and very quickly when I got into the Marine Corps, I pretty much learned that I had about none of the answers that I thought that I had. And these kids are in for a rude awakening when it comes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick, on a lot of levels, physically, mentally, spiritually. That they're just and I also heard that major universities, they don't like to talk about this, but John, major universities have remedial reading, remedial math at the universities, at the major universities, because the kids are just not even close to being prepared.
Yeah, again,
this is so true.
Well,
I can tell you this from my personal experience as a college instructor.
Right.
I would get so many students that would enroll in a course that I was teaching, and they basically had to be referred to a reading specialist for remedial reading, as you pointed out, and the writing skills, so that they could write essay.
But they're just totally unprepared, and it's just totally unprepared.
That was one of the things that Dr. Duke Pesta had talked about in his lecture about Common Core, because he's a professor over at UW, and he was talking about how these kids would be coming in trying to get an engineering degree, and in their freshman year of college, they can't even do 7th grade math.
Well, I don't. What Nick? I know it sounds really weird, but I also found out, in junior high school, they had the math club, they had the Latin club, they had a physics club, a science club, kind of. They don't have all these clubs anymore.
No, they got rid of a lot of them. Because here's the way it was explained, and we really got to get Dr. Pesta on again. And
okay, you know what? You need to have to give him a call.
Yeah, and get this part on in detail because he touched on it in his lecture, and where he said that, look, the way that they work it out, because they are communists, so everything has to be equal.
Right.
What instead of taking the kids and playing to their strengths, because there are some who are, they're good in English. Some of them are good in math. Some might be good in chemistry and whatever. And instead of elevating those kids, they dumb them down to the kids who are not good, so that the kids who aren't good at that subject will feel good about themselves.
Oh God!
So I mean, that's how you do that in a math program. When I was in high school, I was very good in geometry. I could knock the hell out of geometry. I mean, it was so simple to me, it was stupid. But you do abstract math, forget it. I'm completely lost. You know what they didn't do? They didn't tailor the abstract math programs to fit my needs and make me feel better about myself. They moved me down to a different class.
Yeah.
So, but that's not how they're doing it anymore. They're dumbing down the smart kids by making them. They're making everybody conform to the lowest common denominator. And this is not just Orwellian. This is this is right out of Huxley. This is Brave New World.
Yeah. And I have to admit that, and also too. They need to, I hate to say this, but for most of the kids, and I think in California now, the first year of junior college is paid for by the state of California. I don't know where they'll gain the money, but but I think most of the kids are going to have to go to junior colleges. But if this is the fact that you want to try to help some of these kids, I would tell them this, and this is just from my view. These, even though they're extremely in need, but some of the kids need to go enroll at the junior colleges while they're in high school, because they can get high school credits as well as college credits. Well, and in California, if you go and enroll in a junior college, you get it for free, and you're a high school kid. You get it; it's paid for. You just have to buy the book. So my opinion is this: maybe, I hate to say this, if they're going to look at the 20th century in some type of proper way, maybe they're going to have to sit down with the high schoolers and say, you're just going to go into the junior college for the next 4 years as freshmen and high schoolers, and then you can play all your high school sports and have your band and drama club. We don't care. That's cool. Do your thing on your high school, but you're going to be at the junior colleges.
Well,
now,
some of the kids might too, though.
Wait, Nick. Some of the kids might take 6 or 8 years, which will be like 4 years of high school and then about another 4 years. But by the time they finish that 6 or 8 years at the junior college, and some people might want to go on, you know what? They're going to be very equipped to handle a lot. But the problem is now you can't dumb down the education. You've got to tell them it's kind of not a sink or swim. Just say, look, you're going to go to the junior college. You're going to work really hard. This isn't going to be easy. Guess what? You're going to have to study. You're going to have to learn to read books. You're going to have to learn to go to class, learn to listen to your professor, and that the professor is the one who's in charge of the classroom, not some kid.
Well, Wendy, you got to understand the bigger picture. As Charlotte Iserbeat has pointed out.
Of course. We'll have to get her back on.
She wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And,
right.
For years, people have said it's the union people that are the enemies of the school districts. In reality, it has always been the district superintendents who are screened by a group of elitists before they are allowed to get a job. Every single superintendent in the state of California goes before a board of elitists who are basically Marxists and Leninists. I know this from firsthand information. This isn't some rumor. And
right.
They select those that have the criteria that meet their ideology. So
right.
This is why it's a losing battle right now here in the state of California. And
well,
other
it is a losing battle in the state of California, but I think, John, for other states and republics, this is the way to go for the high schoolers. And that way, too, John, for some of the high schoolers to also sit there and say, hey, I got a kid who's just really good with his hands, and he can just build stuff. We're like, you know what, there's an automotive set, even at the JC level, that they shut down at the high school level. Maybe you want to send them to the high school or send them to the wood shop or something and teach them some welding, because this kid's gonna do something like that.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to say was, I went to a 2-year college in California, and even some of those kids that were there really did not belong in an academic environment. They really needed to go to trade school.
Sure.
I mean, and it's nothing against saying, their talents just laid somewhere else.
Right.
But, doing academic work was just not for them.
Right.
But yet, there they were, and the professors were coddling them along. And when one of them, I do remember this so specifically, because this guy was in one of my film classes, and this guy was just had no inclination for that subject at all. He was just not a filmmaker that he wanted to be and whatever. But so he did a really bad job, and he got mad, and he actually wound up suing the school because he didn't get the grade he thought he deserved, or he thought he was slighted somehow because he was a foreigner. And it was just like, no, how about you just really suck at what you're doing and take it for that? But no, he had to blame somebody else, so he had the victim mentality. And I think that's one of the things that's really got to be beaten out of people, is this whole victim mentality, because it really does. Everybody caters to it, and it gives everybody an excuse not to perform, to be able to do anything. I sit home and I play video games really good. That's what I do. Well, get out there and get a job. Oh, why are you oppressing me? Or whatever it is. A lot of people think they're being oppressed by the color of their skin. A lot of people think they're being oppressed by whatever it is that this new society is telling them they're being oppressed by. You can count. You don't even have enough fingers on your hands to count the amount of victim classes anymore. But everybody except for straight white males, Christian males, are now absolute victims that need to be protected by society. And everybody else needs to be, and we all need to be dumbed down to that level. And the stupid part is, because they're not taught critical thinking in school, they're not taught how to do anything in school, they're not taught how to work hard for what you want and achieve anything in life. And they have these blinders that are put on them. They don't even understand how really racist that mentality is. And it's not the white people who are racist. It's those people who are saying, you are a victim and you cannot exist without our help because you are an oppressed whatever, and you just don't have the capability of taking care of yourself. That mentality in and of itself, how racist and how misogynist, and you lay all their little ists that they have and apply it to that, and the people that are on the receiving end of it are like, oh well, I have an excuse that goes through life now. It's like, no, you don't. You're being portrayed as a retard, basically, and now you are a ward of the state, and now you are a protected class, and you're going to get everything handed to you, except for the fact that you're going to now bear the resentment of the people that have to actually work their fingers to the bone and provide you with that, and that's not going to happen for very long. That doesn't last in any society for any length of time.
Right. No, I totally agree. And Nick, and hey, I think that they're going to have to. I think not just California, but I think on the next few years, I think they're going to have to make some serious decisions about the educational system in America, because it's so bad now. It's pathetic.
Oh, it's beyond.
Now look at even the PE programs. About all they teach the kids to do is to play games and to be able to run long distances. And that's all they're really taught in terms of physical skills in PE. Now, I was very fortunate. It just so happened that when I was in the 7th grade and part of the 8th grade in junior high school, that I had an exceptionally outstanding PE instructor. He was Jim Thorpe, the greatest athlete of the 20th century.
You had him as an instructor?
This is truth. This is true, and I'll tell you, he was tough as nails. He had a heart of gold, but he was tough as nails. It was like going to boot camp, Nick, every day. In fact, boot camp for me was, considering what we went through, was almost a piece of cake for me because I knew how to climb a rope hand over hand to the ceiling. Right. I could do pull-ups on a bar the proper way, so that if I had to, I could climb over a wall. Right. So I built up my triceps as well as my biceps, and I was taught how to mount a horse and dismount a horse, and most people are never even taught that anymore, and that saved my life at least once, you know. And then in track and field, you know, high jump, broad jump. We didn't do shot put, but practically everything else we did. And of course, he was the decathlon and pentathlon champion back, I think, in 1912 in Stockholm. I also knew the guy that was the high jump champion at that time, Alma Richards. But it wasn't until recently that I had discovered that it was indeed Jim Thorpe. And it was interesting because at our high school, they invited, and just think, I mean, this is a high school in Los Angeles, and they invited Bob Mathias, who was also a decathlon champion in Helsinki, Finland. And for him to come to our junior high school would have meant that he knew Jim Thorpe. Both, by the way, tried to get into the motion picture industry.
Yeah, nowadays they'll invite Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, God. Listen to me. I think, and let me tell you something, his name is Bruce as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I don't care if he wants to wear dresses, more power to you, whatever. But that's another subject, that using your personal sex life as a political agenda. That's beyond words.
Here's the other thing, because he's talking about the PE classes that they have.
Right.
And when Morgan Spurlock had made that documentary, Supersize Me, he had gone around to a bunch of schools, grade school through high school and all of that, and talked to the faculty about, you know, their physical education classes. And every time they have to do a cut, PE gets cut. So these kids are basically sitting on their ass for the entire school day. They get maybe, one of the phys ed teachers was saying, they get 45 minutes a week, you know, for physical education.
I think in the junior highs, they had all kinds of shop classes and all kinds of stuff. They don't have that. They don't even have that in the high schools. You know, they used to teach people electrical stuff like that. My dad said even when he was a kid. But they don't even do stuff like that anymore. They don't even do common sense. It really is pathetic. But I think
because now
they're going to have to get rid of the Department of Education and chuck it out the window.
Yeah, they're teaching kids how to take tests and answer the questions.
Well, that's just beyond words. I don't, you know, I can't tell how many tests I've actually failed more than just because they.
You know what? I actually learned. This is one of the things I remember about going through my high school, which was a college prep course, but we did get a halfway decent phys ed program and, you know, after school stuff and all of that. Because it wasn't a public school, and believe me, my parents suffered to send me there. But we had a decent enough phys ed program and a decent enough academic curriculum there where I learned more off of the tests that I failed than the ones I actually got the questions right on. because the questions I always got wrong, I always remembered the answer to later on.
I know. It's really true that sometimes when you fail things, you end up learning more, even though you might have to repeat it or do something else. I mean, I totally agree with that because I totally agree with that. I took China Part 1 and passed, but I failed on China Part 2. But you do remember the stuff you don't pay, but then it just sticks with you even more. That's kind of funny, Nicky, when you say that. That's just totally true.
Well, because it is true. You do remember the ones, except nowadays they don't because there is no wrong answer. Remember?
Oh, God.
What is 10 plus?
Answer.
Yeah. What is 10 plus 5? Zebra, because it makes me feel good. That's correct.
Yeah. Well, listen. I think I think they're going to have to. I don't know if because Trump is doing so many things and trying to in this next couple of years, and but this might be in the next presidential agenda, but they're going to have to do something about basic education.
Well, they're going to have to get rid of it.
It is an absolute disgrace in the country now. Yeah. And let's just face it. I mean, it's hit rock. I have to admit, it's hit rock bottom now.
Well, yeah, because here's what happened. And I got this from another professor, not just John here, but from another professor in Wisconsin. Common Core is now a federal program, whereas it used to be a state issue, state by state, whether or not they wanted to adopt it. They had an opt-out on it. But it creeped in, and our government made it a federal program, so the states don't even have the option to opt out of it anymore. California's getting rid of homeschooling. I mean, they've already tried to prosecute parents who homeschool their kids as abusing their, that's child abuse.
I know.
And so they're trying to get rid of homeschooling. And believe it or not, homeschool kids are way smarter.
And there was that thing. I forgot where the kids were, but I think they were I'm not sure if they were in California. But there was a family that abused a bunch of kids, and they're like, "Well, these kids were homeschooled. This is what and they go, "This is what homeschooling does," and that is not even the case.
No. But they want to associate the homeschooling.
Of course, I know that. Right, exactly. Yeah.
So they try to make that when the globalists and the communists want to really fight against something, and they really do despise homeschooling because it gives the kids there a sense of your allegiance is not, they're not being indoctrinated into the club there, so they're going to associate anything they can that's bad with homeschooling.
Right.
Okay, this family abused their kids for what was it, like 20 years or 25 years. This is what homeschooling does. Well, homeschooling had nothing to do with this.
Had nothing to do with it, right? Bunch of psycho parents, but what can I tell you? Yeah.
They have a curriculum. They had nothing going on with that, but no, homeschooling. Yeah, this is part of it.
Yeah, I know.
So they do this.
Propaganda. I know.
Well, it's propaganda, but it's association with things that actually are not associated with each other, just so they can push this propaganda. And this is the whole thing with the New World Order. I mean, they are just pushing on every level everything that's bad that they want to get rid of. Anything that they want to get rid of, they associate it with something else. I mean, we talk about those kids from the school in Florida, and they associate guns with everything bad. Never mind, we're not going to talk about the psychotropic drugs that all these shooters were on. Oh, by the way,
well, exactly.
It's really funny. When I was on my way back to Wisconsin from California, when I was driving through Texas, there was a huge billboard. And it had all these like mass shooters' faces on it. It says "Drugs cause mass shootings."
Totally true.
And I didn't have a camera out to take a picture of it. I was driving by too fast, but it was there. But so they're never going to challenge the pharmaceutical drugs that they have everybody on. Okay, they're not going to they're not going to challenge the mental health issues of the kids or anything like that. It's all the guns' fault. So every time, and this has been going on, I mean, even before Columbine, which is when it really started taking off as a thing, that, everything that's bad has to do with a shooting of any kind, has to do with the guns, but it never has to do with the mental health or the psychotropic drugs that they have these kids on since the day they were born, when they start shooting them up with up to 83 vaccinations at this point.
Yeah. It's horrible.
But just because they're like screwing up kids' brains from the day that they're born, okay, we can never address that issue.
But it's also criminal minds. There is a percentage of the human population that does have a diabolical outlook towards society, and that's never brought out to the
course,
public.
It never will be.
No. And also, too, that the parents have let a lot of these kids be in the video games. They've gotten into the video games, and they've gotten into their phones, that the kids, they have no social skills. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to, they just only know how to just do it's almost like, it is kind of diabolical in a lot of ways. And I think one of the saddest things too, Nick, and they had 50s rock and roll, 60s rock and roll, 70s, 80s pop rock, but the kids don't listen to rock and roll now. They listen to this rap music, which is social destruction. Well, and it's not even music.
Well, the thing
there's no instruments being played.
I can. I'm kind of on the fence about that because I have been a musician in Hollywood for a while. When I was playing in bands out there, rap is not my thing. I don't really consider it music. But you also got to remember that gangsta rap was instituted. It wasn't something that was organically came out of nowhere. I mean, NWA maybe, but once that popularity of it caught on with Straight Outta Compton, CIA immediately moves in, and you got all these gangster rappers.
And I understand. Yeah, right. And because they went to the record companies in the '90s and said, I'm not going to do rock and roll. You're going to give them this.
And you're going to influence. You're going to get more violent. And of course, you also had back in the '90s, early '90s and '80s, you had the influx of crack into the ghetto neighborhoods at Gary Webb.
Oh yeah, honey, that's just another yes. And the cocaine, the heroin, the cocaine, the heroin, the crystal meth that they're using today. And a lot of people some of these people have kids and yet they were born into definitely the drugs and they didn't have grandparents and then there is horror stories. I understand.
Let's even go back further. Let's go back further than the whole issuance of the influx of drugs into the ghetto systems. Which by the way is not even limited to the ghetto systems anymore. It's coming out into the rural areas.
Oh, of course, it's prevalent in every neighborhood now.
Well, let's go back even further than that. Let's go back into the welfare system that really started the breakup of the families.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the welfare system, all these people in the inner cities, they're broke. They're trying to scratch out just something to make a living. Introduce the welfare system. Okay, well, that will help you. Except that you are not allowed to have a father living in the home.
Yeah, I know. Listen to me. Yeah, but that was definitely New World Order right there.
Yeah, there's no father figure. No Larry Elder, a radio talk show host in Los Angeles that I happen to listen to and like, has talked about this many times. Where are the father figures in these homes? The welfare system killed the family in the cities, which is why the cities are a complete mess right now. There is no family units, and they call it the nuclear family. And the leftists have been trying to break that up for years and create this dependency upon state entitlements and state welfare and all of that. And God forbid you ever take away their welfare or anything. But how about you just broke up the entire family? And then you get people running around now going, I grew up without a father. Well, whose fault is that? Well, it's not ours. And I said, never said it was. But whose fault is it? Have you looked into it? No, it's the welfare system that started that. So now you got these kids growing up very disillusioned and with a broken up family. They have no very solid family foundations, no moral compass that has been instilled to them by their family. So what are they going to do? They're going to go out there and do whatever they feel they have to do at the time. 60s, 70s, 80s, and the 90s. Drugs became a huge part of it on the club scene especially. And now you're getting people who are it just I don't know if this is true, so don't take this as a scientific study on my part because it's not, but it just seems to me that people in the inner cities are becoming more and more mentally ill as we go along. And it comes out of the fact that we have been breaking these families up. These people have been doing drugs for generations, have been on welfare for generations. Nobody's ever been teaching them self-sufficiency of any kind whatsoever. It's just been a state as God, and that is the absolute communist goal that has been infiltrating into this country that
I agree.
Joe McCarthy warned us about. Again, you may not like what Joe McCarthy did. I don't agree with a lot of the tactics that he had, but man, that guy was a warning bell going like, this is what's happening in America right now. And he was absolutely right. So, you can't sit there and condemn Joe McCarthy completely because he was standing up against communism. Because, look at what they've done to Detroit. Look what they've done to Chicago. Look what they did, what they're doing in California right now. California, every time I go back there, California is worse.
Yeah, well, I know. I can tell you that there were a couple of times this week that by 12 o'clock, not by 2 or 3 o'clock, but by 12 o'clock, you could not see the sun because there was so much chem in the air.
Well, not even that.
Wait a sec. And that I even heard on the radio today, Nick, that a caravan group of people that are trying to cross the border in caravans. And I'm thinking, and Donald Trump said, what do you think I'm trying to shut the borders? Because we can't take any caravans or anybody else for that matter. Right. This is crazy. And Jerry Brown has got open arms to every person known. California is broke right now, Nick. California is hurting. There's no money.
Beyond broke. California is almost $1 trillion. I think they said somewhere hovering around plus or minus $1 trillion in debt, and that's one state.
And also too, Nick, that's just a couple of trillions of dollars. It's $2,500 to $3,000 to rent an apartment.
Yep.
It's like over $1,000 to rent a room.
Yep.
So how much money do you think you have to be making? It's they've got serious problems in California, Nick, and it's not getting any better.
Beyond that, because I was watching Los Angeles Morning News the other day, and Eric Garcetti, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, was on. And they, of course, he had his little spiel about stuff, and of course the subject of the homeless people that came up there. When I was in California last time, for the last few months, I actually went down to what was supposed to be a feminist march, and the address on their initial address on their website was in the wrong place. I wound up down on Skid Row. And I figured, well, while I'm down here, I'm going to record the things that are going on. It was wall-to-wall tents everywhere. And yet, and these people are not being helped. They're screaming in the streets. They're drug addicts. They're destitute. Whatever their situation is, there they are. And the only response that you ever see that any of the governmental bodies of that area ever come up with is, we need to raise taxes. Here's the thing. The homeless people, I'm pretty sure they don't pay attention to politics on much of a very great level as a whole. Dick Gregory, who is an advocate for the homeless in California, did. He was great. He was always up in their faces about what was going on with them until he died. Yeah,
he was an icon, Dick Gregory.
Yeah, but
I met him and I knew him. I was very fortunate.
Yeah, he was a good guy. But the homeless people out on the street, they don't understand how they're being used as pawns for the communists in California to keep raising taxes on everybody else.
Right.
And that money never goes to actually help them.
Well, listen, I'm paying $3.35 a gallon of gas in California. People can't put gas in their car now, Nick.
I know. Believe me, when I bailed out of there about a week or so ago, I stopped at the cheapest gas place that I know of. I put $25 worth of gas in my tank, and I got less than half a tank of gas for $25.
Right.
And, that got me as far as wherever, I forget where I stopped at after that, but, I put $25 worth of gas in my car here in where I'm now, and, it'll fill it up.
Yeah.
The gas prices in California are ridiculous. They constantly raise it. And, of course, they always sell it, just like every communist government ever does. We're selling it for the good of you. We need to help them, and if you don't,
they don't help. They don't do. None of the money goes to the roads. Listen, they've stolen all the money in California, as far as I'm concerned. Every nickel, every dime.
Well, you never notice that every time they earmark any kind of taxes there too. And this is going to be something that's not just here.
The bonds that they put up, Nick, and we tell people don't vote for them. They're just tax bonds. Don't vote for it. Don't vote for it. But they've got people who are voting in our elections that weren't born in our country that do not understand our laws, and therefore
not only that, but they don't understand the fact that this money that they earmark on certain tax bills are eventually just going to wind up in the general fund and be used for whatever they wanted to. And that's the original intent of that tax or that fee or whatever it is never goes to what it's supposed to be for.
Never. It's a joke.
And a lot of it, I have a feeling, winds up in politicians' pockets.
Probably.
And why do you think these guys are killing each other over trying to get these jobs in state government? I mean, our LA City Council gets paid more than members of Congress do.
Right.
So,
listen, the LA City Board is a disgrace, and the horror stories. It's the corruption in California is off the charts. John, would you agree to that?
I think we dropped John.
I think it dropped John. But Nick, would you agree to that? I mean, I think it's off the charts.
Absolutely, Wendy.
Oh, there you are.
I was muted, but you're absolutely right.
The corruption is beyond words in California. California has set new standards for criminality beyond words. Murder, rape, and mayhem, #1.
Well, let's look at this, because John, you were an educator. Where does all that money go that keeps going into the education budget there?
Very, very little of it actually goes to the education of the kids.
Yeah, go figure.
But let me give you an example. Years ago, this goes back a few decades, when I was a teacher in a elementary school district, that district superintendent, had a higher salary than most governors throughout the United States. Think about that for just a moment. He got a larger salary every year than did most of the governors of nearly 75% of all the states in America.
Yeah, I believe it.
And, so much waste and overhead, so much recklessness in constructing buildings, putting in asbestos, and then having to take it out, and all of the toxicity.
And I think the best, I definitely think the best thing in the bilingual education has been the biggest. Listen to me, loser, waste of money. Because you could have given every kid a private tutor in every subject, including performing arts, to teach them to dance or sing or play an instrument.
Well,
it's been a joke, John.
Well, then there was some years ago when they built that new high school right on top of a toxic waste dump.
Yeah, I won't even go there. Yeah,
this is not just local to Los Angeles. We speak of it here on the show because that's what we're most familiar with. Of course, I'm getting very familiar with things outside of California too. But, in Madison, Wisconsin, they are just the dumbest bunch of liberals that you'll ever see. They got the same problems there, just not quite on such a grandiose scale.
Yeah. By the way, that was
City.
Belmont High School.
Huh?
That was a new Belmont High School that was on a toxic waste dump.
Yeah, right. What kind of idiots? Right.
It's not just localized to LA. That just seems to be our focal point because that's what we're familiar with. But I mean, this is going on everywhere across the United States. Other countries, I would love to have anybody from another country who's listening to us, shoot us an email, shoot us get on our chat room on Revolution Radio.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Let us know what's going on over there, because I'm pretty sure it can't be much better.
I have heard horror stories in England that England is in trouble right now. England and France.
I'm sure.
By the way, Wendy and Nick, there's another factor that most people will never realize, and that is that the really dedicated teachers like myself, who could take sixth graders who were basically performing at the third grade level and bring them up to grade level in a period of a few months, and by the end of the school year, most of them are performing well into the high school level, some even into the college level. But we were then targeted because we did such a good job, because we taught so effectively, that we were harassed to the point that they would hire professional people to spy on us the whole day, write up these complaints about us, and we had to rebuttal those every day after we got home from a hard day's work.
Yeah, because you were making everybody else look bad.
I agree, John. And I agree, John. I totally agree. Look, I heard from somebody who's taught that a lot of this in the last 15, 20 years that the male teachers had to leave both of their classroom doors open because they feared if they failed a kid, the teacher was looking down my top. They were doing this, even though the professor was at the front, or the teacher was at the front of the classroom.
Yeah, but let me tell you some other horror stories. Some teachers who were in the same boat as I was were placed in very damp rooms where they would become sick because of the dampness and the poor ventilation, whatever. Of course, this had some effect on the students, but they didn't care about that. They were mainly trying to destroy the teachers' health.
Right.
And
the teacher jail.
Of all of the teachers, of all of my professional colleagues that were harassed as I was, I'm the only one that's living today.
Right.
Oh my God.
It's just terrible.
We had a guy that I know that I was on the Central Committee in Los Angeles with. Wendy knows him, Jay Stern. He was a good guy. I mean, I liked the guy and everything like that. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things. He was very much a neoconservative kind of guy, but he got an accusation leveled at him, and he got put in teacher jail for. Last time I was there, he was still in teacher's jail, and that was like a year and a half before I even bailed out of California. So they'll. And it was probably a really bogus accusation. I mean, if I know the guy, and I don't think he would have ever done something what they accused him of, but it was kind of like, why don't you guys just do an investigation, find out whether it's true or not?
Well, the thing about this is
they have to go through this prolonged friggin' investigation that doesn't really amount to much of anything. Meanwhile, the teachers that are pushing the programs that the elitists want, they are free to just indoctrinate and make up lies and do all kinds of stuff as much as they want to.
Right.
And they are getting catered to by the system. And that was the problem. I think that nobody saw coming years and years and years ago is that when you start getting these communists into these positions, they start promoting the other communists.
Oh, I agree.
And then they move up and they start promoting them to all the other important positions, and it's not just in education, it's in any bureaucracy. And pretty soon they like a lot of conservatives, constitutionalists, libertarians are finding out that they're getting weeded out of all the governmental programs. And education right now is very much a government program.
Yeah.
They get weeded out of corporations. You can, if anybody ever rises to the ability to have their own company, never promote a liberal or a Democrat. Find out who they are, because they will find a way to make your company or your bureaucracy, if you're in a government position, the most miserable place that you will ever want to be. And you will be, if you're a conservative, you're going to be on the outs very quickly. Because they are pushing an agenda. It's called the dictatorship of the proletariat, and they have been pushing this thing forever. and they are getting rid of you. They're getting rid of
Right.
people who love America. They're getting rid of the constitutionalists. You know, and I got into that argument when I was in college in California, when I told an entire class of people during a break that said Bill Clinton sold America down the river. That was back.
Absolutely.
And they were all like, they lost their minds on me, and I'm just like, hey, guess what? You can scream at me all you want.
Hello?
Yeah.
Did we lose Nick?
So,
By
it
the
was
way,
funny.
Okay. Nick,
I think you're breaking up.
I'm still here.
I'm just gonna.
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you now,
I can
Nick.
hear you now. Yeah.
All right.
So your class went crazy because you said that.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I bet you the NSA was listening in there, and they decided to. I must have said a trigger word or something, so they kind of interfered with our signal.
Yeah. Wendy, Nick, I was going to say one advantage that I had over most of my professional colleagues that were also harassed was that I had a master's degree in an academic area rather than in education. And so I was able to go on and teach at the community college level after going through this harassment for so long with the district. But
that's so sick. And you know what? The teachers today, I don't even know if they actually know subject matter.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, though. I know a lot of them that do. And
okay, well, that's good to hear. I mean, if they
thing.
specialize in English or math, I mean, good for them.
Yeah, but the thing is they're very restricted on how they're allowed to teach because of the Common Core curriculum that they're stuck with.
Oh, it's terrible.
They want to teach. A lot of them do. Of course, you have the ones that wind up on YouTube all the time berating their students for not being leftist or not being communist or Democrat or whatever for various reasons. But there's a lot of those teachers that do want to teach. They can't do it because they have to follow the Common Core curriculum, which is nothing more than an indoctrination.
Is the Trump administration following this?
I don't know. I think he's got his hands full with a bunch of people who are trying to...
I know right now. And this is another thing. Like, he's fighting a few wars right now, guys. So, I mean, I understand that this isn't... But I think hopefully maybe in a couple of years or something will give. I mean, that this is... The bottom line is that this problem is going to have to be dealt with.
What he should have done, at least in my opinion anyway, is he should have followed Ronald Reagan's lead, which was do away with the Department of Education altogether.
Yeah. Get rid of it.
Leave it, send it back to the states. It was a state issued program for so many years.
Right.
And then when Jimmy Carter came in, who's a progressive liberal Democrat, started the Department of Education, the money started flowing. And, of course, it was the Rockefellers that pushed for it anyway.
Right.
And they got it. And it's become this absolute abomination of an education system.
Right.
Since,
in order for the states and districts to get back some of that money that goes to the federal level, every district has to hire people to write grants. And they command expensive salaries. And that's how the districts at the local level in the state of California are able to get some of that federal money back. But they have to hire professional grant writers to get part of it back.
Well, another thing, too, John, in California, Trump doesn't want to give any money to California because of all the sanctuary cities, which I don't blame him. I totally agree with him. It's just crazy. So I know there are some cities that are fighting sanctuary cities because they're like, we're not going to, come on, this is crazy.
Well, aside from the fact, the thing is that Common Core standards are now a federal issue. The states the states have no choice on it. They either teach the curriculum, or somebody in the federal government can hold them accountable for it.
If you're not sending your kid to a private school or some type of how do you say this? Homeschool, you're screwed.
Yeah. I used to think of myself more as being a coach rather than a teacher. I didn't want to eliminate or fail kids. I wanted to see kids succeed. And
right.
A coach teaches his team to win. And that was my philosophy, both at the elementary and secondary levels as well as at the college level. And one thing that I can recall in retrospect, as prestigious as it was to teach at the academic level of college students, it was more rewarding to teach these sixth graders who had been programmed to be failures and bring them up to a level whereby they could have self-confidence and enjoy learning from that point on in their lives. To me, that was far more rewarding because that meant that when that kid left my classroom, he was going to be independently able to think and continue learning on his own if he had to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and except they don't teach that anymore.
No.
They want. As a matter of fact, I saw this this post that somebody had put up on social media today where they it was 8 plus 5 equals whatever, and they said get 10. Make 8 plus 5 equal 10.
Well, 8 plus 5 can't equal 10.
Well, this is the whole thing. The kid wrote down in pencil, says this is impossible. You can't make it happen. And the teacher said, yes, you can. You take 2 from 5, and then you add the 2 to 8, and that equals 10, and then you add the 3 afterwards. And it's like,
what?
That's still 13, you moron.
Right. How can it possibly be 10?
Because the teacher, because of Common Core.
Well, you know what, I gotta tell you something, I don't think I'd last too long because I wouldn't teach such garbage. That's just beyond words. Maybe I'd get a few of the parents in the classroom and say, you know what, I think the way to do this is to force some of the parents to come into the classrooms and say, kid, I want you to get up and teach some of the kids.
Right, but a lot of the parents still have been abdicating their parental duties to the state for so long that they can't be bothered with it. So anyway,
God.
let's put it like this: education in America sucks anymore, and we'll see you all next week on the Granada Forum.
Absolutely, we'll have a nice guest for you. Thank you for joining us, and God bless.